Hello, everyone. We are back. Zack and Bill, a Jew and a Muslim, walk into a podcast. This is episode 4. I know episode 3 was diving into deeper emotions and kind of, spiritual experiences. Zack, tell me, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. Obviously, for those who listen to episode 3, still integrating those experiences. I'm being fully transparent. For the last week and a half, I've tried to stay a little bit away from the news, which is why in today's episode, I'm just going to be fully transparent and passing the microphone over to Bill a little bit more, and kind of allowing him to guide and lead the conversation about what's been going on.
Absolutely. Well, Zach, I appreciate you. There's been a lot of bullshit in the news, unfortunately. We saw that crazy tour that Trump took to the Middle East. Let's start with that first, right? Want to get your opinion on a few things. What was your impression of Trump heading to the Middle East, meeting with all these dictators? I'm going to tell you my personal impression because people think that this was some win for the Muslim world and that I saw a lot of Zionist rhetoric that was saying Qataris are now running the United States government and our universities, which is just blows my mind that you can make that accusation. What are your thoughts on the whole Middle East tour that Trump just did, and kind of, do you feel like it was performative? Do you feel like it was actually something we've never seen before? Or do you think it's just bluster and bullshit like usual?
Well, first off, I actually want to touch on, do you feel this tour in any way was in conjunction with Trump recently pulling away support for Netanyahu?
See, I initially wanted to believe that was true, but the way everything is kind of snapped back into place and Israel is still going, actually, it seems like Israel got pissed and now they're doing something wider than before. And now I just learned that JD Vance is going to visit Israel to kind of, tame those flames of what happened with Trump. If you want my personal opinion, I don't think Trump has broken with Israel at any point. I think Trump has broken with Netanyahu, possibly. That's maybe why he didn't go. But I think as far as Israel's main goal and intention, the right-wing extremist fanatic government right now, the Knesset in Israel, I think he's aligned with them still 100%. Look, at the end of the day, these Middle Eastern dictators that he visited, the MBS and all these UAE, which is God. Well, I could get started how I feel about the UAE. UAE is helping fund a genocide in literally Sudan. And so for me, it's just kind of like, these are just the same people shaking each other's hands. These people are not friends to the Muslim world. I know people think like, oh, Trump's get along with the Arabs. Look how awesome he is. These people are more out of touch with reality than Trump is out of touch with reality. These people were born in a gold palace with lions and tigers and solid gold cars and gold toilets. These people have no concept of what it is to be a regular human. I would argue that these people, the crown prince, the royal family, whoever the fuck decided to call them that themselves, are some of the most scummy people on this earth. And so him meeting with them and shaking their hands, especially the Emiratis and their prince and whoever the fuck is in charge there, I wasn't impressed. As an American Muslim, I wasn't impressed. I don't give a fuck. These people are part of the corrupt syndicate that's allowing the fucking genocide of Palestinians. So, like, to me, I didn't give a shit. Even for Muslim American relations, I didn't give a shit because these people are crooked. They're evil. You
So,
tell me your opinion.
so no, you know what? Even before I dive into my opinion, I think it's really good to like map this out, because for the average person in America right now, most don't even know the difference between Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Iran, right? And so
Very good point.
I think it's really good to even dive into like what the hell is happening, right? And your experience as a Muslim man and your relationship to the leaders that Trump is visiting, and how the Muslim community at large perceives these leaders in these countries.
Right. The Muslim community at large, for the most part, thinks these people are some of the most corrupt, heinous people on earth. If there is even so much as a sliver of dissent, you are killed, jailed, excommunicated. And this monarchy hasn't existed until like the last 100 years. It was established by the British Empire after they helped the local Arab factions overthrow the Ottoman Empire in World War I, which is when England took over the colony of Palestine, by the way. That's how they were able to give it away to the Rothschild family. I'm not lying. This is true. This is in the Balfour Declaration. People think, oh, they hear the word Rothschild and they're like, that's a conspiracy. It's actually not. It's like, it's real. Like, Lord Rothschild helped fund the British government in their wars and promised that they would give them back a piece of Palestine at the time, which makes sense. They said, okay, we'll go in, we defeat the Turks, we take it, and you can have a part of it.
Yeah.
Makes sense from a financial and like a property perspective. That's how war works. You break stuff up after you win the spoils.
Yeah.
So they England installed an Arab monarchy from the Hashemite family. The Hashemite family was an influential family at the time that claims to be the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, who is a revered figure in Islam. But the truth is, no one can prove that. No one can say, yeah, they are the real descendants. And let me tell you, the Quran, even for Muslims, says it doesn't matter whose son or child or daughter you are, you can still be a wicked person.
Yeah.
Even in the Quran, the Prophet's family, his uncle, and people that were his bloodline were opposed against him. They were against Islam. And so it doesn't matter if you're the great, great, great descendant, you're still a dick. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You don't get some immortal protection for just existing. You just
Yeah.
don't. And that's why they installed these puppet governments. A lot of people don't know the King of Jordan is literally half white British, half Jordanian. And so you realize these people don't represent the people of their countries at all. These
Yeah.
people represent kind of colonization and the influence of the Western sphere being allowed to kind of reign dominant over those countries. And it works a lot better for us if they're dictators because they can force their will quickly, as opposed to if they had an impartial democratic government. Who knows? They might not agree with what we have to force and say, you
Yeah.
know? And it makes sense why they love a man like Trump too. He's literally like them. He's
Yeah.
authoritarian. He's very listen to me or go to hell. Everyone's got to love me. If you don't, see ya. It's literally the same exact thing. Your best friend if you are praising them
Yeah.
constantly, but your worst enemy if you disagree with them on anything.
So, what countries in specific are you referring to right now in terms of when you say
So the
these? Yeah.
three big dogs I call them
Yeah.
are Saudi Arabia, UAE, which is
Yeah.
popular for Dubai, the
Yeah.
Emiratis, and then Qatar is also in that mix, but Qatar is a bit of a wild dog
Okay.
because Qatar hasn't kind of fallen in line. They have some factions in their government that'll align with Russia, Iran at
Okay.
times, not just the United States. Another big one on there is Jordan. And let me just make this clear. I'm not talking about the people.
Yeah.
The
No, you're talking
people
about
of these
leadership.
countries are wonderful people. They're
Yeah.
hardworking. A lot of times, a lot of them are not involved in politics to any degree. Because if they are, then they're, see ya. But it's the government and it's specifically the monarchy. I think it's
Yeah.
funny that these places have monarchies. It's the
Yeah.
only place, some of the only places left in the world that have a king and a
Yeah.
queen, which is just bullshit. There's no concept of a king and a queen even in Islamic law. It's funny because these people are like, we follow Sharia doctrine. Where the fuck did a concept of a king and a queen come from then?
Yeah.
You know? So it's interesting to see the contradictions that these places make. Now, I will say MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, extreme in his kind of his actions, but he's been more of a progressive guy. He's allowed things that we haven't seen in Saudi Arabia and probably the history of ever, raves, music festivals, I guess women being able to do like certain things, dress
Yeah.
certain ways. Which don't get me wrong, I have no problem with that. My problem kind of is this what democracy? You guys think this is what democracy is?
Mm.
Music festivals and raves and women dressing like not as conservatively? I don't think that's democracy. I just think that's performative bullshit. So to me, at the end of the day, because you look at that, it's just like Israel, right? Like I
Yeah.
see the Israeli government saying, oh, I'd like to see homosexuals go into Gaza. There's so many homosexuals in Israel. And I'm just like, it doesn't matter if you're homosexual in Gaza, you'd be
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
Let's take things one step at a time.
Yeah.
Let's stop trying to pinkwash the
Yeah.
genocide,
That's
but
the
also
pink
at
one.
the same time,
Yeah.
just because they're homosexuals in Israel doesn't mean you guys aren't corrupt. You guys are dicks. You guys are killing kids.
So
Okay.
I'll interject real quickly just to frame things for the audience and people listening correctly too, right? Because I think we're also all learning together. Some people come into this podcast and know all this right up front, and some are trying to get a perspective from both you and I that they wouldn't necessarily be able to have.
Absolutely.
So essentially, we are deconstructing the fact that Britain 100 years ago drew lines, right, and installed their own monarchies essentially to serve Western imperial interests and propped up certain families. And it was not based on character. It was not based on a certain thing. It was essentially rooted in your ability to serve our interests.
Yeah,
And-
people need to know. Let me interject real quick. Saudi Arabia didn't exist. There was no concept of Saudi Arabia. This House of Saud is a family name. Literally,
Yeah.
it's a country named after a family. This is a very wealthy family. They were some of the first to tap into the oil reserves that they found in the Gulf of Arabia. But the
Yeah.
point is, this is not some country that's existed for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's
Yeah.
actually a very new creation in the last century itself.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No, I know. I mean, I really think it's important to create this distinction because this is even relevant to Palestine, Israel, because Israel itself is a fictitious nation that was created through Britain as well, right? Like this all comes about through Britain.
Exactly. A
Yeah.
century ago, there was no Israel either, right?
Yeah.
So
So
it
it's
was just, it was the land that was there and what people called it.
yeah. So we essentially have this Western imperial power 100 years ago that drew lines on a map that installed their own nations, installed their own monarchies, right, which are very feudal and very authoritarianism or authoritarian. And here we are, right? And America's kind of taking over that position in place of that Britain once had. But
But let's talk about this because I think you bring up a good point, right? We say 100 years ago, a lot of these countries didn't exist, right?
uh
Or they were not districted the way that the British districted them, or they
yeah,
drew the lines, or they made them be. So technically, these are novel creations in the last century, right? They're
yeah,
kind of Frankenstein-like monsters. If there was an area called Palestine, or there was an area called Egypt back in the day, which we know there was, it just didn't have the defined borders and
yeah,
lines as you see today,
yeah,
right? So, in a way, if the monarchy, if the Saudi government and the Jordanian king and the Emirati pigs, if they all get together and say, you know what, this is wrong. Palestine was a nation before and Israel didn't exist. Well, guess what? That means they didn't exist either. That means their monarchy is illegitimate. And it all comes full circle now. You understand why they support each other. They've helped prop each other up,
yeah,
literally. And
yeah,
to say one is fake means all are fake.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And this
So
is
it's
where we can connect. This is where humanity connects as Jews and Muslims, right? Like,
yeah,
doesn't matter if it's a Muslim country or if it's a country claiming to be Judaism. Wrong is wrong. I want you to speak. I'm like
yeah. No,
speaking.
no. I mean, it's it's. I've already knew this coming into it, but obviously, it's still interesting to hear that we basically have these feudal monarchies within certain nations that the U.S. is highly invested in and highly invested in propping up, which kind of leads into why Trump was there.
Yeah, well, for me, it's just like Trump's like, oh, we brought back this many trillions of dollars. Did the people of that country vote on that, or was that
Yeah,
just the king's? It was probably the king's decision, and
yeah,
I saw some stuff that I saw when he landed in Dubai, UAE. There was those girls swinging their hair around like some like possession. I don't know if you saw that like walk he did. It was the most un-Islamic thing I've seen in my life. And so for these countries to say like, oh, we represent Islam, we represent Muslims, I think the only conundrum is that Saudi Arabia contains Mecca, which is a very holy
yeah,
city for Muslims.
yeah.
Muslims are compulsed to go there
To go
at
on
some point
pilgrimage.
in
Yeah,
their lives. And because of that, this creates kind of a, well, we should, Saudi's probably the authority on Islam. That could not be further from the truth. I mean,
yeah,
look, those people, not just from a humanitarian prospect, but from every lens of immorality, whether you want to talk about women's rights or
yeah,
self-indulgence or just basic civil rights, they're scum. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Just because you have a high tech, train system or you have a big jumbo jet and everything's modern doesn't mean that it's not propped up by scum. At the end of the day, we saw that trip. It's just another reaffirmation of the global empire. That's
yeah,
unfortunately like that's what we see there. This is not Muslim versus Jew. This is
yeah,
not, a religious war. This is colonial Western imperialism against freedom and democracy. And you
yeah,
can choose to be on any side. It doesn't matter what your religion is. I see a lot of people defending the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Jordanians. They're like, oh, you want us to be involved in war too? Can't you see our countries are thriving? You just want us to go to war?
yeah,
What about us? And it's just kind of like, okay, but you're enabling the people right next door to die.
yeah,
So it's, I don't know. Here's the thing I found out about this perspective. And this is my problem as an empath. I always try to put myself in other people's shoes and see their perspective. And so sometimes I even start doubting my perspective. I'm like, well, okay, well, they got a
yeah,
point. Look, everyone's got a point.
yeah,
But can you objectively stand back and say killing children is justified in any way, shape?
yeah.
I don't think so. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, I don't think that is justified. And we just talked a little bit about how Trump possibly snubbed Netanyahu,
Well,
but
I'm just going to drive the conversation a little bit different direction, and I hope you don't
go
mind
ahead,
if
go
I
ahead.
do.
Yeah, 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 go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, well, I mean, Listen, like, because we really believe that part of why what's happening in Palestine is able to go on is because of the dehumanization of Muslims and Arabs in general, right? And we've seen this like throughout like American history, especially within the last few decades. And so you're bringing up these points right now too, where like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, right, and the UAE have deviated from the principles of Islam. And so I know a lot in America like are confused as to what Islam is, what it means. And so when you bring up these things of like these nations, this leadership has deviated from what this is supposed to be about. Just as a Muslim man in America, I wanted to ask you, right, because this podcast is also about humanizing and relating, right?
Right.
And even with the horrific atrocity, the genocide that Israel is carrying out under quote unquote the Jewish banner in a sense, right? I still come in here and say like, hey, this doesn't excuse it at all, but this is due to the unhealed trauma of the Jewish lineage, right? And so where in your mind have this leadership deviated from the principles of Islam and what it means to be Muslim to you?
I think they've abandoned the common Muslim man. I think that they have decided, and woman, I think they've decided that protecting their monarchy, protecting their interests supersedes any greater interest for the Muslim population at large.
Yeah,
I think they're willing to see young Arab children die and not give a shit, which blows my mind of how you could be an Arab Muslim and continue to see Arab Muslims getting killed in masses and say it's okay, it's for the greater good.
yeah,
I mean, it's just to me it's perplexing, right? And I'll tell you, after as a young Muslim man after 9/11, so many people are still uneducated. Some people think
yeah,
Islam is a race.
yeah,
Some people think Muslim is a race. It's not, it's a religion. Some people think Arabs are just one specific ethnicity. They're all Arabs. That's not true either. Arabs just refers to countries that primarily speak Arabic. Ton of countries that speak Arabic, Morocco, Libya,
yeah,
Egypt. These are countries that are not even in the Arabian Peninsula. They're in North Africa.
yeah,
Uh, and each place has a different dialect, the way they speak it, the way they are. It's like saying England is America. It's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Each place has its own culture, its properties, the way they behave, but we both speak English, right?
yeah,
It's like saying America's Australia. It's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
So we still speak English, but it doesn't mean we're the same people. And so you have to understand all these places have their own interests at heart. They're not going to work. But it was always seen as Saudi Arabia was looked to as the Vatican for Muslims, right?
yeah,
You would hope that this place that controls Mecca, that has dominion over the holiest site in Islam, would make decisions that are right
yeah,
for the greater Muslim population at large. And maybe MBS, who is the current king in Saudi Arabia, maybe he thinks that's what he's doing. You know,
yeah,
maybe he thinks modernization to the highest degree and aligning with Trump and Israel is what is best
yeah,
for the Muslim world. But honestly, even if that's what he believes, nothing justifies the mass murder of children on his doorstep. And if you can't stop that, and if you can't put that out, or you can't negotiate your way to a ceasefire, then your power, your influence is useless. I
yeah,
really do feel like that. I feel
yeah,
like it doesn't matter how much money these people have. At the end of the day, it shows you it's all baseless. And it comes back to, let's think about it right here. Yesterday, we found out Joe Biden was diagnosed with a very aggressive prostate cancer that has metastasized to his bone.
yeah,
And it makes you just realize life here is so short, so short. It doesn't matter if you were the president of the United States, you're going to be buried in the same ground that a common man who lived on the streets would be buried in.
yeah,
And then where do we go from there? That's another question, right? But my thing is, if I was Joe Biden or if I was just any man, right, I would be scared of what comes next after this life because I turned a blind eye to mass murder of
yeah,
thousands and thousands of kids. I know I've heard there's people that say, well, I don't believe in an afterlife. You don't have to believe in an afterlife. You can believe in karma. You can believe in energy. You can believe in reincarnation. But you know what? It all comes back to the same place. If you're a shit person, expect a shit outcome. If
yeah,
you're a good person, expect a good outcome. You
yeah,
know, we can fight about what that materializes as all day, but I think that's generally accepted across the globe. And I know there's people that are once you die, once you die. Well, I hope Joe Biden's one of those people because I mean, I heard the news. Don't get me wrong. I never celebrate or I never get
yeah,
happy someone's got cancer. I think that's awful. But at the same time, I don't believe he just found out. I'll tell you right now, from a
yeah,
medical perspective, the care of access that that man has
Yeah.
he must have known years and like at least a year and a half or 2 years ago, because prostate cancer doesn't metastasize to your bone immediately. And you're telling me the president of the United States just found out he
Yeah.
had prostate cancer? It's not true. So that means they were going to put up a guy who's pretty much dying to be our president and continue pushing the levers behind the scenes. I think we need to start asking questions of the Democrat Party, even what the fuck is going on back there?
Well,
You
I
know?
mean, listen, man, I mean, from my perspective or whatever, right? And for those listening on this episode, we were talking about the fact that Joe Biden got diagnosed with, what was it, a vicious cancer,
Yeah,
yesterday.
it's pretty much stage 4 prostate cancer that's already metastasized. So death sentence. You can expect him to be dead in the next 6 months.
Okay. And so obviously, there's a lot of theories, most likely correct, that the DNC was hiding this for years and still running him for re-election with the knowledge base that he had cancer and was likely going to die pretty early into his second term so that Harris could take over. Listen, we know the corruption within the DNC, and this is just another window into the level of the corruption within the Democratic Party. And we also understand now that like the Democratic Party is just a lever for a system that is maneuvering in the background. And when we talk about Trump visiting these countries and these leaders, right, and the monarchies that exist there. We're talking about an overall system that is in place that has allowed for the genocide of innocent children in the Middle East who just happen to be Arab, right? And, this has all happened due to the dehumanization of Arab populations for over a century. And so, that's why I challenged you a little bit. Explain like how these, monarchies and these leaderships have deviated far from the principles of Islam, because it is our inability to respect these countries, to respect these people, to respect those cultures. I have, for myself, as a Jewish guy who doesn't know that much, right? My ancestors are from Eastern Europe. I'll say it right here. You look at pictures of Lebanon and Egypt, and even Iran, like at 50, 60 years ago, and they were, really beautiful countries. And then you see what happened with Western imperialism and the destruction that has occurred. And it's like we've rooted out the soul of these places through Western imperialism. And I just don't think we ever discussed. I'm a little off topic now, but
No, you're
I,
you're you're directly on it
yeah,
because you're right. Western imperialism sent these countries back
yeah,
3 centuries, and it wasn't Islam. Islam had always been there. Islam
yeah,
had been there for the last 1,000 years.
okay.
It was Western imperialism and war. That's the truth.
But that's the important distinction, and I think listeners need to hear right now,
Right.
right?
No, you're right.
Because I'll be fully transparent. It's like, growing up in the West, or whatever, especially from our news media, we're given a really horrific viewpoint on Islam and Muslims in general. Okay, and I remember when I was 25. It's actually really funny. People wouldn't think of this, but the first religious doctrine I read was the Quran, and I remember reading it and be like, "Oh, this isn't bad." Like, I was like, "Wait, what?" Like, this is
No,
great.
you're right. I've
No,
had
I was like very, I was so confused at what I had heard from the media about what Islam represents, and then going into the text and the scripture myself, right? And so I think it's really important because I mean this is what has allowed Palestine to happen, right? This is remnants of our own war in Iraq, right? And so, but now we have a full-on mass genocide of children run by a Jewish ethno state that we fund and control. So, anyways, it's bringing light to the fact that we have these monarchies in the Middle East that do not represent the interests of the Muslim people, that are not representative of the common Muslim man and woman. And that even these surface level displays of like, well, look, we're advanced now, especially when you talk about Dubai, right? Like we're advanced now, and look how modern we are. It's still, from what you're saying, it's still a farce,
Oh
right?
yeah, it's a complete farce.
Yeah,
It's a complete farce. It's almost like it's like Russia,
yeah,
Like, come on, like you can show us a nice public train system, but then we know that any opposition to Putin gets killed in
yeah.
like a matter of months. So it's the same thing.
So I want to ask, did this stuff used to happen like before Britain drew lines on the map, or was there more sovereignty? Was there more like
There was
transparency from
there was
leadership?
definitely more sovereign. It was never
Okay,
this bad, I
okay,
will say. Yes, it was under Turkish rule,
yeah,
but I will say one thing the Turks did was their colonialism was different. It
okay,
wasn't a English like colonialism.
yeah,
They allowed every region to retain its native tongue.
okay,
They didn't force the Turkish language on anyone. They didn't force any country that they officially had lay a region over to convert
yeah,
or do anything compulsory. They just required, I guess, supervision and tax. And look, I'm not, every country has a right to
yeah,
freedom, right?
yeah,
If people felt compelled that they're, why are these people taking taxes from us, or why are they here? Then
Yeah.
okay, that's literally the founding basis of America.
Yeah.
But my point is, they were not nearly as bad as the people you see in charge now.
Yeah.
They weren't. And there was no mass slaughter. There was no warfare that was spilling over every couple of years. There was
Yeah.
no children dying in masses. But let me tell you, this war that stemmed has bled all the way. It's not just in Saudi Arabia. This has gone, we've seen it go west all
Yeah.
the way to Libya and Africa, and we've seen it go east all the way to Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Yeah.
Because what's happened is America shows up and, along with Israeli interests, infuses the leaders with billions of dollars and says, you follow this, fight this, do that. Next thing you know, Arab Muslim lives mean less. They
Yeah.
just mean less dollars. And at the end of the day, it is, I always tell this, look, I always tell people, you can sit here, you can point your fingers at the Israelis. You can say, oh, they're so awful people. We have our own demons. And
Yeah.
until we master the demons in our own realm, MBS, these dictatorships, this farce perversion of Islam that Saudi Arabia has pushed called Wahhabism, which didn't come into play until the 18th, 19th century. That
Yeah.
means it didn't exist at the time of the Prophet Muhammad. Until these things are self-rebuked, until these things are tackled within our own, we'll always be damned. And that's the
Yeah.
truth. Look, I think the best of people are people that look introspectively, and this is in the Quran. It says, God does not change the will of a nation who does not wish to change itself. I mean, and you're seeing that right now. You're
Yeah.
seeing that at play. Until these countries wake the fuck up, it doesn't matter how many trillions of dollars you have, you can't even stop. You can't even tell your neighbor, hey, please stop killing those kids.
Yeah.
Does it matter? Does it matter how rich you are?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't, because you're going to die anyways.
Yeah.
And so, until as a Muslim man, it's a conundrum, right? Like back in the day, if you told me like Saudi Arabia is being put in good graces with America, I'd be like, okay, that's great. You know, we need good American Muslim relations. But I'm telling you right now, this is all performative.
Yeah.
This isn't helping the average Muslim. This isn't helping the average whatever. You know, it's just more of the same performative bullshit. I'll hand it to Trump. It's a great showman.
Yeah.
Great showman.
Yeah.
He'll make things look so. I saw him upload these videos to Twitter. Someone made almost like a movie. He put like the American flag next to the Saudi Arabian flag. It's
Yeah.
like he lands and it shows him and the king walking, all these grand shit. And it's like, whoa, I just feel like I watched a trailer for some sick movie. But
Yeah.
guess what changed? Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just, which is how propaganda works. Remember, they released those videos of Putin on that horse
Yeah.
shirtless a few years
Yeah.
ago, and it made him look like the strong Russian man that Russia needed at the time. And it's just, look, I think anyone with a sense of education or logic can
Yeah.
see performative bullshit for what it is. But unfortunately, this population doesn't listen to
Yeah.
education and logic anymore. It listens
Yeah.
to theatrics, it listens to hyperbole. And I wish education and academia were respected, but after that COVID debacle, I don't think there's any going back. You know? So I've never seen so many people in my life go, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. This
Yeah.
is bullshit. And that's because we're finding out we've been lied to about a lot of things. And how are you supposed to trust the people that told you to just believe them all the time when they're killing kids and they're telling us it's all right? You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of like the gravest thing. You tell me what else is on your mind.
Well, no, I mean, I think this is great conversations, and I think it's areas that, and awarenesses and a knowledge base that's sorely missing in the West. Even for the average listener at home, like what is Wahhabism? Like, why is that a farce of Islam, and like how did that get erected in Saudi Arabia? How is Saudi Arabia just now a vessel to serve Western interests? Like, where and when did that happen? And what does that do to the average person?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So in the 1950s, King Faisal, it's when where's the 60s? It's either 50s or 60s. King Faisal used to be the king of Saudi Arabia. When the Israelis were attacking Palestine at the time, he put an embargo on oil to America, which was a big fucking deal. Like no one had ever done something like that before. And America, the government at the time, I don't know if it was Nixon or who was after Nixon or Johnson.
Yeah.
It was either Lyndon B. Johnson or Nixon or one of these people calls up the king of Saudi Arabia and he says, if you don't take off the embargo, we will bomb your oil fields to hell right now. And he says, go ahead, bomb them. I don't care. He's
Yeah.
like, we lived in the desert before. It's you guys that need this oil, not
Yeah.
us. We'll survive
Yeah.
again. And within the same year, he was killed. And then you saw, after his death, a lineage of selected people, kind of who just agreed to, we won't be involved. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see how, and I keep saying this, even if there is a benevolent monarchy,
Yeah.
if that exists, doesn't exist currently
Okay.
because they've been taken out completely.
Yeah.
They've been, the people you see in power are people that were given the, okay, this person's allowed to be there. There's
Okay.
a really popular guy I'm seeing everywhere nowadays. I think his name is Ibrahim Tahor. He's this guy in Burkina Faso or
Yeah.
in Africa. He's like a very African nationalist. He's got the little beret,
Yeah.
very pro-Africa. He's trying to push the French out, out of the colonies and the government and the bases they have. And apparently there's been like 30 assassination attempts on his life, all paid for by like Western,
Oh, wow.
interest. And so one of his bodyguards came out and I saw an interview and they said, he was saying they offered me $6 million and a chance to go to the West, England or America, live there
Yeah.
freely with my family. All I had to do was shoot, this guy, Ibrahim Tahor, in the back of the head, but they said specifically it had to be in the back of the head while he was praying. And I thought it was really interesting. Like, who the fuck is, dude, I'm telling you, there's some fucked up shit. And,
Yeah.
we know this isn't some conspiracy or some
No.
shit. This is like, we know the CIA and the FBI. Look at Castro in Cuba. Look at Chavez in Venezuela. They've tried multiple coups.
Yeah.
They've partnered with rival factions to try and overthrow governments all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that testimony, I believed it 100% when you said it. But
Yeah.
my point is, if anyone arises that even has general interest for the Muslim good,
Yeah.
they're usually killed, jailed, excommunicated. Another great example is Pakistan.
Yeah.
Pakistan had a prime minister that was elected. His name was Imran Khan. In the last 5 years, he was the first guy to break from America, the first guy ever. He said, no, fuck you guys. You got us involved in Afghanistan, which caused the death of 150,000 Pakistanis. No one ever talks about that because guess who was fighting America's war? The Pakistanis. They were paying them because they're right next door to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
150,000 dead, like 5 million Afghani refugees in Pakistan. They said aligning with America destroyed our country. So he said, we're going to align with China. So he made a bunch of trade deals. He opened a port in conjunction with China. They made
Yeah.
a deal to open a train. Next thing you know, he's in prison. He's in prison and he's still there. He's been there for close to 500 days. And it's on the pretense, I'm not lying, this is what they charged him with,
Yeah.
for a false marriage to his wife. So they'll make shit up, they'll throw you in there, they'll
Yeah.
partner with the rival political group, and they installed, guess who? They installed the former prime minister, who was the most corrupt guy ever
Yeah.
that Pakistan had. They installed his brother.
Yeah.
It's just, that's why, when the whole India Pakistan thing broke out, I was like, well, the government's corrupt as fuck, but
Yeah.
they were killing people. They're killing innocent people. That's what
Yeah.
I have a problem with. But to say that the Pakistani government is any better than the Indian government, no, they're both scum.
Yeah.
They're both scum.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, we're getting a live picture in that what happened 100 years ago, right, with Britain kind of drawing these lines. It has just continued over and over and
Isn't
over
that
again.
crazy? Did
Yeah.
you ever even hear that before
Yeah,
October
no, I
2nd?
mean, especially like in the last couple years, I've started researching a lot more because I was like, yo, like, what is going on? And I was shocked to understand that really all the problems that we're experiencing currently is due to Britain deciding to draw like random lines. I mean, yeah, someone like I lived in Kenya for a little while, and the issues that existed there were all due to the fact that Britain drew a random country that divided like different tribal cultures amongst one another that like had no part and should have been like weren't ready to integrate, and they just
Same thing with
yeah.
India, Pakistan. Why do you think Kashmir is an issue? They
Yeah.
did the same fucking shit. They put a majority Muslim population city and they
Yeah.
said this can be India's.
Yeah.
Of course there's going to be fucking revolt.
Yeah.
It's just common sense, man. It's
Yeah.
just I think all of our problems can be traced back to the British.
Well, no, but I do think it's really important to actually understand that we are experiencing still the, what do you want to call it, like the downfall. That's not even the right word here, but like my words escaping me, but like really the downfall or what occurred from Britain just becoming this global power and drawing random lines on map and literally like taking the soul and the culture out of certain places, and uprooting it and installing leaderships that don't look out for the common person. And it's become this global elitist class. And
Yes.
and I think, that's also the distinction we're kind of trying to make here is that there's a huge propaganda campaign to divide us amongst one another along ethnic, cultural, religious lines. But we have to understand that when we talk about Trump visiting the leaders of Saudi Arabia and Qatar, right, there is a global global elitist class here that has developed, and every single policy that is enacted is to uphold that class, right?
Spot
And
on.
it transcends religion. It transcends religion. It transcends ethnicity, right? But they want us to think that it is ethnic, right? That it is
Right.
religious. But as you said, like these men don't even embody the principles of Islam in their leadership, right? And you see it in America. Do you think Trump embodies the principles of Christianity?
It's a
No.
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect analogy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the best analogy you could have given today is literally these kings of Saudi Arabia and Dubai and Jordan, they're as Islamic as Trump is Christian.
Yeah.
It's all performative bullshit. And
How about
we
this
know it
actually?
is too, you know, like we
Yeah.
don't have to pretend like, oh, maybe in private he's a really good man.
Yeah.
Are you people fucking stupid?
Yeah.
You got to take people at face value, man. The way they show you is who they are, you
Yeah,
know?
I agree. And I really think this is what, when we talk about why we're here and what a little bit the purpose of the podcast is, right? Is we're trying to figure out like what's missing in today's world, you know? And obviously, like you jump online and immediately you're driven into these polarizing dialogues of left versus right or this versus this, right? And we have to understand that there's a common theme here underneath all of it, and it is to pit us against one another, to dehumanize us, to, propagandize the fuck out of us, so that we don't understand that the leaders of Saudi Arabia don't care about Islam. Donald Trump does not care about Christianity. Netanyahu does not care about Judaism. There is a concerted effort to uphold a certain type of class and to uphold a certain type of resource and power structure. And that if you go against that in any capacity, like US will get the CIA, FBI involved, and that's it for you. Or if you're even trying to rise amongst, the European or American political sphere, you will get shut out.
No, you're right. Percent.
And until we recognize that and bring that to our awareness that we're being tricked to go against one another, right, we're going to be spiraling in the same directions over and over again. And like I said, the rhetoric or the propaganda for specifically the last 30 years in America has been anti-Muslim and anti-Islam. Even when I first was diving into what was going on around Palestine, Israel, like I was throwing Sam Harris and all this other stuff. Like, look, it's Islam, it's Islam. And I think it's so important to deconstruct these harmful narratives, and because this is what is allowing and enabling what's going on in Palestine to happen. Like there's been a concerted propaganda effort to dehumanize Arabs and Muslims for a very long time.
And let me give you a great example because sometimes people can get when we use Israel or we use the Middle East as an example, people will start conflating things very easily. Let's
Yeah,
throw a Christian country in the mix.
yeah,
Turkey, which was also a big colonial empire back in the day through the Ottoman Empire,
yeah,
committed a genocide in Armenia.
yeah.
We know that's true. We commemorate here in America, but guess who doesn't recognize that genocide?
No.
Israel
Oh wow, wow.
refuses to say Armenia had a genocide. Why? They
Yeah,
made a trade deal with Israel, with Turkey, and
yeah,
Turkey ships them a lot of oil and other goods. And they said, "Yeah, we'll give you those goods and stuff. Just
yeah,
don't say this genocide happened." So Israel, till this day, openly, which makes a big deal out of the Holocaust,
yeah,
justifiably so. They claim to be Jewish, but one of the biggest Christian Holocausts, which was like several million people too in Armenia, is
yeah,
totally denied by
yeah,
Israel because of trade partnership with Turkey.
yeah,
So here's a great example of didn't matter if you're
yeah,
Christian, you're Muslim, you're Jew, no one gives a shit. It matters the powers that be want to be the powers that be.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, fiscal. It's
yeah,
fiscal and it's power related, power
yeah,
dynamics. That's why you see a bunch of Armenians, not Kim Kardashian. That's like the worst Armenian to point out, but
yeah,
like Dan Blazarian and all these other big Armenian figures are very pro-Palestine. You're
yeah,
like, why? Isn't that strange? Like
yeah,
you think they'd not like Muslims because of Turkey, but no,
yeah,
they're actually very pro-Palestine because they know what's going on there happened
yeah,
to their country.
yeah,
Same as the Irish. The Irish
yeah,
are a Catholic nation. You would think, why are they supporting Palestine? They're
yeah,
Catholic.
yeah,
Well, they had the same shit happen to them through starvation tactics with the
yeah,
British.
yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah. It's the ones who have experienced genocide themselves, we would expect to be the ones speaking out against genocide the most. Anything else that you feel we should dive into before we close this
there's
episode
like
out?
the big stuff. I mean, we could talk about the Kanye song if you want. We don't have to.
Yeah, sure. Let's dive into the lovely Kanye West to close this one off. Why don't you inform people what happened with Kanye West, and then we'll share perspectives. Let's give Kanye the energy he so desperately wants right now. So yeah, let's feed it.
So go ahead, go ahead.
No, you share for you.
Okay, okay,
The
I'll
audience
start.
in on what happened. I
Kanye
want to know.
Kanye was kind of scratching the edge. He was putting out songs that slowly got more and more anti-Semitic. And then he went full blown Michael Jackson AWOL and put out his song Heil Hitler, which was taken down on all major platforms, including
Yeah,
YouTube, within 48 hours. But I would argue what he did. Here's a great example. I remember do you remember the Charlie Hebdo
yeah,
shit in Paris, France a few
yeah,
years ago? So
yeah,
like 10 years ago. It was a long time ago.
yeah,
But I remember someone had drawn cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. And you know that Muslims revere Prophet Muhammad in a great
yeah,
perspective. And that's very insulting to them. So,
yeah,
you know, Charlie Hebdo, whoever was that company or that made the cartoons was firebombed, I believe,
yeah,
or their place was destroyed. And I saw every Western leader show up and declare I literally remember America, England, Britain, all these big Western people showed up to the doorstep of Paris, France, and were like, we stand with Charlie Hebdo
yeah,
against this. Now, let me tell you something. I did not condone those cartoons.
yeah,
I didn't think they were appropriate. I thought they were hurtful and I thought they
yeah,
were awful.
yeah,
And I'm a Muslim myself, but I, at the same time, don't have a problem in terms of that person was allowed to do whatever the fuck they wanted. I don't have to answer for that person's sins. I don't have to answer for that person's personal actions. And no, I would never wish violence on someone because they don't hold my view. I think that is ultimately American, right? I remember
yeah,
growing up with this we would tell each other, I may not agree with your viewpoint, but I will fight like hell to make
yeah,
sure you're allowed to say it and defend that fact. And I think we are seeing the erosion of that in America, at least when it comes to the Israel topic, because it seems you can talk about everything here but Israel.
yeah.
And I'm not saying what Kanye West did is justified. I'm not saying what he did is cool. I'm not even saying it was about Israel. It was just fucking weird, right? Which is what he wanted. He wanted attention on him. But for it to get banned everywhere is kind of weird. No, like,
Ah,
'cause you can still buy a copy of Mein Kampf at Barnes and
well,
Noble.
that's a good point. So I mean, but though, so here's the thing though, like you can. So I mean, I've read Mein Kampf, whatever was important for me to understand, like what the fuck allowed this to happen.
Damn, bro, you read Mein Kampf?
Yeah, like
I
what?
didn't. No, I'm being funny. I'm like, if I said that shit, they'd be like, "Holy shit!"
Oh, I know. Well, I think that's why I got rejected from Georgetown Law when I applied because they asked you like if it, like the most important books you read, and I put Mein Kampf like because it was. I feel like if you're going to stop evil, you have to understand the psychology of evil. You
Yeah,
have
one
to,
hundred
yeah.
percent.
And you know, I don't think they took that one well. I understood what I was doing. Anyway, dude, I think it's a moot point. Like, you know, I mean, it's so disrespectful. Like, it's
No,
so,
I agree.
yeah,
I
it's
think it's
so
very sensitive.
yeah, it's so disrespectful. And you know, I would hope that this would. I actually like. I'm all for free speech, right? I don't even necessarily know if banning the thing was the right thing or whatever, right? Because you know, you gotta let it. I do believe that you let all speech out and it's allowed. But it's like, I think if you were to take the most horrific leader or the most like the main antagonizer of a group of people, right? Like, you know, and promote them and promote their name just to stir shit up. Like, it's so disrespectful that it's a tough line. I know exactly what people are saying. I get it, right? Where it's like, well, why is this banned? And the Satanism isn't banned and this stuff, whatever. But like, you know, and I understand like how do I want to even fucking say this, man? Like what Israel's doing is the most fucked up, horrific, atrocious thing that could ever be done under any name, under anything, right? Like the literal murder of innocent children is the most demonic, fucked up thing ever. But then is applauding and like making a catchy tune out of the man who carried genocide not only amongst Jewish people, but amongst anyone that didn't fit this Aryan disposition. Is that the right thing to do here? Right. And yes, you know what? Like Jewish people were more heavily involved in media. We're more heavily involved in law. Do we control these sectors to a degree? I would say, yeah. And maybe I get shit on for even saying that. But like, you know, it's like a lot of that.
You see,
Yeah, I said it. Yeah,
no,
I'm
I'm
giving you a
just
fucking pass
clarify.
here, bro. Like, yeah, right. You got hide behind me on this one. And so like, but like I don't give a fuck whether it's banned or not. It's so fucking disrespectful. And this is not the way to solve this. This is not the way to get out the anger. This is not the way to get out the resentment. This is not the way to call out distortions within our own culture, within our own religion, right? To pedestalize the most horrific figure of the last century, right? Whose atrocities and unprocessed trauma is now allowing what is happening to Palestine. This is just a never-ending circle of shit. And so, yeah, dude, I don't fucking like the song. I think it's horrific that it's out there. I also fucking in the midst of this, I feel bad for Kanye. Like, and that's weird for me to say. But like, I mean, the guy just put out a song about sexually molesting his own cousin, and that same cousin went on to murder a pregnant woman and is in jail for the rest of his life. Like, and this is a man who is incredibly talented, incredibly gifted. My favorite albums were Graduation and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And he has clearly been crying out for help. He's clearly been hurt and abused in Hollywood. He's clearly been through things that, dare I say, like he is an absolute victim from. And it's weird that like in Western society, like he needs help. Like he genuinely needs help, not from this way of a judgmental, like, who's insane? Like a lot of celebrities lose their shit. You know, like there's something nefarious that goes on in Hollywood, and I understand that Kanye's been trying to point out. But making songs like Hail Hitler and anything like this, and then us participating it and being like, oh, why are they banning it? I don't think it does anyone any good. But yeah, man, I mean, he's a man that's clearly just looking for attention. He's saying whatever gets attention at this point, and it's a cry for help. And it's sad. I think it's sad. And even like the Nazi thing is just another fucking cry for help. Hitler would have murdered y'all too, right? Like,
No, you're right.
you
You're
know,
right.
Hitler would have murdered you. Hitler would have murdered me. Would have murdered Kanye. So to prop this guy up and like it's fucking ridiculous. And I, you know, it finally had to be said somewhere.
No, I mean, I agree. Look, not at any point did I think what Kanye put out was appropriate.
Yeah,
I think it was
I hope so.
wildly
I
inappropriate.
hope so.
But this is also the guy who showed up with his wife butt-ass naked
Yeah,
to the Oscars, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't think he's in his right state of mind. I don't think he also gives a shit. I think
yeah,
he's at that stage where he's like, I don't care. And I wouldn't be surprised, when you start seeing this, when is,
yeah,
start fearing for someone's life. It's like, when is it the chance someone might overdose or they
yeah,
might, just we know he's addicted to nitrous. We know he's addicted to like weird drugs.
yeah,
I just don't know why I know so much about Kanye. Like it's so weird, right? Like,
yeah,
why do we know so much? Like, I didn't ask for this information. It's like with the world, all the shit going on, the greater geopolitics, the
yeah.
anarchy, the monarchy, the resistance, and then there's Kanye. Dude, Kanye, whether you believe it or not, Kanye is a central figure in like Western culture now. Like, I know that sounds weird, but
Yeah.
it's true.
But this is the idiocracy on display here. And like I said, Kanye is someone who generally like is crying out for help and needs support. But we have, you know, Kanye West, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and these are men who like have really no moral or ethical boundaries at this point, right? Who I think have clearly been through severe trauma and psychological fracturing themselves, and they're here to just be as absurd and ridiculous as possible. And we buy into it, hook, line, and sinker. Like, and we're wanting the clowndom. I don't even know what to say, but like, you know, it's
Like a gesture for the
yeah,
world,
it's
you know?
yeah, it's this
Yeah.
gesture archetype, but it's running our world, and that's a sign of something that I don't think is positive, right?
No, you're right. It's a sign of societal decline. It's a sign of,
Yeah.
well, we don't give a shit. Let's just do whatever's the most outrageous shit possible,
100%.
you
Yep.
know?
Yeah. And 100%. And so that's just on display once again. And so when everything's just absurd, when everything's just ridiculous, it almost cuts us off from our humanity a little bit. And there's just we've lost a level of respect for one another and a level of decorum that I think is important for a healthy
Bro, it's
society.
horrendous, man.
Yeah.
I don't like after this genocide is over, we have so much fucking work to
Yeah.
do to
Yeah.
return things even to a glimpse of
Yeah.
normalcy.
Yeah.
Because and this is the problem, right?
Yeah.
This starts with everything you and I have seen in our feeds for the
Yeah.
last 2 years, and we'll wrap this up soon.
Yeah.
But after you've seen so many dead kids, so many burnt
Yeah.
bodies, it's just like it's open Pandora's box, bro. Here's
Yeah.
a great example. That Heil Hitler song, I don't think it would have ever came out if the shit that was going on right now
Yeah.
wasn't going on. It's just another way to grab more attention. because of what is going on.
Well, it's because we've been desensitized,
Right.
so like, so when you see children being decapitated and limbs being blown apart or whatever, like a song like bolstering up Hitler, like it doesn't even feel anything anymore because of the insanity that we're exposed to each and every single day. Like the boundaries of what we thought was possible, like, is being crossed in the most horrific way every fucking day. And so us as a society, we're becoming desensitized, and to kind of laugh in the absurdity and laugh in the chaos. It is a coping mechanism. It's one of the
It
only
is a
things we have.
total coping
Yeah,
mechanism. You're
it's
right.
a collective,
You have
like
to laugh now so you don't cry, right?
yeah, like yeah, 100%. It's a collective coping mechanism, and it absolutely makes sense because I mean, listen, dude, like I'll leave the episode off at this, and it's super interesting because like I remember when there were stories that like aliens were here and ETs were here and like all this stuff, and the main comment that I would see on social media was, "Well, can they pay my groceries?" And if
Dude,
no,
same. I saw the
I
same.
don't fucking care. And it's like what may be like the most like, oh my God, there's other space, like the mysteries of the universe are unfolding. And people are like, bro, I'm barely getting by. I don't give a shit. Like, are they gonna solve the fact that we don't have fuel? Are they gonna solve the fact that we don't have food? Are they gonna solve the fact that we're using our own weaponry to murder children? Then I don't give a fuck. Like it's just it's so and I can
That's so true, bro. We basically confirmed
yeah.
that aliens sort of existed and no one fucking
Yeah.
cared, bro. No one cared. Like,
Bro, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I was on a full scholarship to one of the top law schools, and while I was there, I could not afford my fucking diabetes medication to stay alive sometimes. Like what the fuck? Like so I'm gonna care about like everything's just gonna seem absurd and ridiculous, you know? And so yeah, I
and this
just
is where I think it's a good way to wrap up too. This is
yeah,
where we connect, right?
yeah.
The average Jew and the average Muslim have a lot more in common
Oh,
than the
100%.
governments of Israel and the governments of these Muslim monarchs.
Yeah,
Trust me, they want you to think it's you versus like, us versus each other. But
yeah.
in reality, it's not. It's
It's
us
us
versus
versus the British.
literally, yeah, us versus the British too. But the average Muslim, the average Jew have so much more in common
Yeah, no, for
than they
sure.
do with anyone that's causing the genocide or feeding into that bullshit right now. And when we realize that, when we realize, holy shit, we're really pointing the fingers at the wrong people
Yeah.
when we have liberation.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you for listening into
Yeah.
episode 4 of A Jew and Muslim Walk Into a Podcast. I hope you enjoy it. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and to continue listening as episodes are released on a bi weekly basis, meaning every other week. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.